He'll make it for sure. Now that's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
Hey, Luke.
Yes, Gene Simmons?
He's probably the best when it comes to this stuff.
Thanks, Gene.
You've got the touch. You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Hoops Heaven proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle.
Ellis fumbled the ball. 2 on the shot clock. Goes up a prayer. Yes! As he was falling to the ground, it's a 3. He shot it literally from the hip.
Definitely a highlight.
Here come the Billikens. 4 on 2. McCall. Ellis. Left corner.
We're missing out.
Bang! From way down under. Cody Ellis.
Now it's time for another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle.
Hello and welcome to Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle, and we've got a championship winner, Cody, and it's your former team. I don't know if you ever thought you would see the Illawarra Hawks win an NBL Championship in your lifetime, but you now have. So it's going to be a lot of fun to dissect that and get your thoughts on how you felt watching your old team that you did go to a grand final with and see them finally break through and win a championship, and they did it in Game 5, beating Melbourne United on their home floor, and I'm sure the entire region of Illawarra is still celebrating right now. I'm sure. I don't think much work would be getting done right now as we record this on Monday. I think it'll be a very quiet day across the working town. So congratulations to the Illawarra Hawks, and fully deserved. They were the best team all season long. So it's good to see them get the reward of the championship. And they did it without Sam Froling in the end as well, who probably is their most important player. So, devastating news to see him go down in the same week that his brother made a remarkable comeback. Davo Hickey, officially the MVP or not, he was the hero of that series for the Illawarra Hawks. So we'll get your thoughts on that and how it all played out with Matthew Dellavedova as well. And once we get that done, Cody, we'll have a bit of a chat about March Madness as well and get your thoughts on that as we get down to the Sweet 16. So that's a lot for us to get through. We're here, as always, thanks to Hoop 7 and Tap Touch. I'm Chris Pike, but a very happy former Illawarra Hawks forward right now, Cody Ellis. Cody, how you feeling?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. It's still pretty cool to be able to see, the whole Illawarra region celebrating and that kind of a thing. And you're right. Look, especially over the last few years, the last thing you'd expect is for the Hawks to be a champion. Yeah. So, I think just massive congratulations to all involved and just how impressive the turnaround's been since Tatum's taken over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the club almost didn't exist for a while there. They even lost their name for a little while. They were told they weren't allowed to be Wollongong or Illawarra. They had to be just the Hawks because they were going that poorly in terms of how they were being run. But for them to now be champions, I mean, you know how close you got, and it was only Bryce Cotton that denied you when you got to a grand final series. Really, I mean, he was just on a different planet. But having been to a grand final with that team, having known what the community is like to get behind them, how does it feel for you seeing them become champions?
Yeah, awesome. Like it's obviously was able to kind of look back and reminisce a little bit on when we did make the grand final series and how much the community got around us and how big it was. And yeah, look, we obviously didn't quite get over the hump, unfortunately, but that was as close as we'd gotten for a long, long time. And then, I mean, since then it's been some pretty dreary days and some not so fun seasons to watch and be part of. But look, like I said, just the ability for Tatum to have turned the club around the way he has on the floor is super impressive, and just the fact that the ownership group now and what they've done to really turn the tables and put the Hawks back on the map.
Clearly, the key is just avoiding the Perth Wildcats in the playoffs, because I think it's the last 6 times, whether it's a semi-final series or a grand final, that it's the Wildcats that have ended the Hawks season. So maybe that's just the key, getting on the opposite end of the draw as the Wildcats.
Exactly. Yeah, the old Cats, were the ones that got us, unfortunately. So look, I mean, like I said, it's super impressive, and still just as happy today as I was when that final siren went off.
Could you imagine a community enjoying it more? I mean, you get to a big city like like Perth, and by the time the Wildcats win a championship, sort of most of the communities turn their attention to the Eagles or the Dockers. You go to Melbourne, everyone's sort of focused on the AFL. You go to the Kings, and everyone's sort of in NRL mode by then. The New Zealand Breakers, they're mostly in rugby mode for most of their life over in New Zealand as well. But I know it's an NRL town in Illawarra, but could you imagine a community that actually embraces their NBL team anymore? Yeah,
not really. Not really. I think probably the two closest would be Tassie and
absolutely,
and Cairns.
Absolutely,
I think if Cairns were to get over the hump, I think they'd be very similar to what the Hawks community was.
How could I forget the Jack Jumpers? Because it's very similar to last year, isn't it? Where the whole town is just right behind their team.
It's fun, and it's awesome to see those little smaller towns that really get behind their team, and hearing all the commentators say that the stadium yesterday was as loud as they've ever heard an NBL stadium is pretty big, because there's been some pretty loud stadiums here in Perth. And,
pretty cool. The biggest ever crowd in that building as well. Awesome. I think it was 5,686. Probably some of those just had to be standing. There probably wasn't a seat for every single person, but that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we had held that record up until then, because same thing in our grand final series. It was similar. We broke records and stuff like that for crowd attendance, and I mean, we thought it was sold out back then. So they've obviously found an extra few seats and some more standing room, and we're able to pack them in like sardines, and it would have been a fun environment to be in.
So looking back on the series, so last week where were we at? We were tied. It
was 1-1.
We were tied at 1-1 last week. So we got to game 3. Melbourne took that, and they won that 83-77. And again, for the second year in a row, they were up 2-1 in a championship series. But then the Hawks dug deep, and they won game 4, 80-71. And then that pushed it back to a game 5 back in Wollongong. And for the first time all series, the home team won. Yeah. And the Hawks won 114-104. They were clearly the best team in game 5. And they were clearly the best team all season. I don't think anyone would have felt like Melbourne stole it off them, because Melbourne's such a good team. Yeah. But I think in hindsight, the best team has won.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, you look at the ladder, I think there was only a game difference in the end between the two teams. But look, the Hawks were definitely the most consistent and the best team all season. And it's not often that you see the best team all season actually win the championship. So it's all the more impressive that they were able to get it done. And I think it definitely did come down to the best two teams in the league, and again, the most consistent.
How do you reflect on the series? I mean, I feel like this was probably the most attractive basketball we've seen during the NBL season. As you look at the numbers, and all our offensive numbers were through the roof. I mean, we had a team like the Hawks averaging over 100 points for a game in a 40-minute game. I mean, but it felt like this was a very different 5-game series. This wasn't the free-flowing offensive juggernaut sort of a series. Is that just naturally what happens when you get to a championship series? I mean, the 5 games, there was no blowouts. They were all pretty close, but it wasn't this sort of exciting, attractive basketball. But is that just what naturally happens in a championship series?
Yeah, I think so. I think at this point of year, the teams know each other as well as they know themselves. It's all about adjustments, and not just game to game, but quarter to quarter. Yeah. And I think that both coaches did an unbelievable job of having their guys prepared for each and every game, and everything being thrown at them. And yeah, look, there was not really any game. I mean, this last one was a bit more of a blowout in terms of the score, and
but you still never quite felt like Melbourne were completely out of it.
They weren't,
because they're capable of coming back at all times, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And look, I mean, if Chris Goulding doesn't go 1 for 9 to start, and it's probably a different game. Yep. If Melbourne makes some free throws, it's probably a different game. So it's it wasn't the most free flowing basketball we've seen. But again, I didn't go in expecting to see that kind of like Melbourne weren't going to let the Hawks just run rampant like they had most of the season. Yeah. That was never going to happen. And vice versa. I think the Hawks did a great job defensively against United as well.
I think the big difference was when the Hawks started playing more physically, defensively on Delhi in the last 2 games, because, I mean, clearly he was the best player across the first 3 games, and he was a big reason why Melbourne was up 2-1, but they just did a great job of denying the ball being in his hands, and he wasn't able to be the same sort of playmaker across those last 2 games.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. He couldn't stamp his authority on the game the way he did in those first 3. And Yeah, they just did a really good job, and then did an amazing job on Chris Goulding, who had one of his best seasons. And look, just across the board, I thought they were really good. The bigs just super aggressive on the Melbourne bigs, and a couple games just got them in foul trouble. Really, the last 3 games they were all in foul trouble for most of it, and just did a really good job of being super aggressive and putting them on their back foot.
Rob Lowe couldn't stay out of foul trouble the whole time, could he? Unfortunately. I'll get your thoughts on Marcus Lee as well, because we saw something that I don't think I've ever seen in an NBL game ever before. I'll get your thoughts on that a bit later as well. But to start with, I want to talk about the Frolings. Let's start with the good news, because Harry Froling, this is an amazing story. I mean, it's a terrible story if we go back 2 years, a bit over 2 years, when he was still playing at the Brisbane Bullets. Anyone who doesn't know, he was back in Wollongong after a game, went out for a beer, which everyone has the right to do, and some coward punches him for no reason. I think we're thankful that he has been dealt with by the law. Usually these sort of guys get away with it, but luckily he has faced justice, so that's a positive. But it was a horrible recovery for 2 years for Harry, and he was told he wouldn't play basketball again. He was told he would be lucky to live a normal life again after the brain injury and the brain surgeries he had to go through, and he had some really dark times. But clearly the drive to want to play basketball again was something that motivated him. He got back in great shape and signed to the Taranaki Airs to play in the New Zealand NBL. And not only did he return, but he looked in great shape. It's probably the best shape we've ever seen him in. And not only, it would have been great if he had a complete donut across the stat sheet just because of how good it was to see him back playing. But his very first game, 32 points, 12 rebounds. He was incredible. And it's a nice little sidebar that he's been coached by Sam McKinnon, who was with him at the Bullets at the time when it all happened. Give me your thoughts, Cody.
Yeah. Look, lot to unpack there. But look, obviously extremely happy to see him back on the floor. And has gone through a lot in the past couple of years, and have touched base with him a few times, and he seems like he's in a good headspace now, which is great. He was in Wollongong training with the Hawks for the past couple of months, I think, and getting into some good shape. And it sounded like he went through some pretty dark times, like he said, and his weight ballooned out, and he was always like one of the bigger guys on the floor, and I think just the fact that he probably couldn't do a whole lot, and that just all kind of compiled, and he blew out a little bit, and then all of a sudden is just now that he's kind of thought that he can get back on the floor, he really turned it around. Yeah. He went and he lived with Sam. He was on a super strict diet and getting himself into great shape, and I mean to be able to go out and your first game in 2 years. Put up those kinds of numbers is super impressive. But yeah, look, I was so happy to see him out there and looking like he was enjoying his time again.
It doesn't matter if this happens or not, because it's just great to see him back happy and healthy. But do you think it's realistic that we see him back in an NBL court?
If he keeps putting these numbers up, absolutely. Yeah. I think if he can kind of stick to what he's been doing to get him to where he is, and kind of keep that, all the off-court things going trending in that right direction, then absolutely, and he'd be a force to be reckoned with. Yeah.
Then the other side of it, his younger brother Sam, who has been so durable across his entire time at the Illawarra Hawks, but then we get to Game 4 of the Championship Series and he ruptures his Achilles. I mean, not only an injury, but it's a 12-month injury. I mean, it's really tough to come back from this sort of thing. It's horrible to see. I mean, you knew that he feared the worst as soon as it happened, and then I feel like by the time he came back to the bench in the second half of that game, he'd already known what the result was. But he'll always go down as a championship captain at the Hawks, because he's still, he's been such a big part of this team. And I mean, remarkable. He hadn't missed a game since New Year's Eve 2019. Crazy. 176 games in a row until Game 5 of the Championship Series. What were your thoughts when you saw him go down?
Oh, look, my heart sank as soon as I saw it happen. And then you saw him get up and kind of just have to sit back down in the middle of court, and the cameras panned to him. And as soon as he rolled back over and his foot was off the ground and it was kind of trembling, I was like, that's not good. It's look, I unfortunately pretty much called that straight away. That it was an Achilles, and it just looked awkward. What he was doing. Again, one of those non-contact injuries that are never good. And it sucks. It really sucks because he's just been unbelievable this year. And he's been so fun to watch, and just, I guess, the growth over the past, 12, 18 months that we've seen from him has been really enjoyable to watch. And look, he was primed for a pretty big payday.
Yeah, yes.
And
that was my next question, because he's about to sign the biggest contract of his life, probably, whether it's to stay at the Hawks or another NBL club. What do those teams that had an offer on the table now do, knowing that every chance he won't be able to play at all next season?
Most of those offers had come off the table, I'd assume, unfortunately. Which, look, probably good news for the Hawks, because
yes.
It's something that they'll obviously, I would assume that they'd look after him and still sign him and or at least offer him a contract.
Yeah.
And look, to be honest, I don't know if Sam would have left anyway. I think he loves it in the Gong. He embraces, that kind of culture and everything, and it suits him perfectly. But yeah, look, I do think some of those big contracts, I'm sure Perth would have gone after him. I'm sure most clubs would have.
We've already heard the Kings have.
Yeah, most clubs would have thrown their hat in the ring and at least offered him, because just of how dominant, and he's still young, and he's still got a lot of games left. But yeah, look, it's super unfortunate, and it's always frustrating to see. But yeah, especially when it's someone as good a bloke as Sam is as well.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. I think it makes him more likely to stay in Wollongong because they'll be the ones that are happy to keep him around when he's doing his rehab. Wasn't a series without controversies as well, Cody. The MVP award, clearly, I think anyone who watched the 5 games would clearly know that Davo Hickey was the player of the series. And if you're an MVP, surely your team has to win to start with. You can have a great series, but if your team doesn't win, how much does it actually count? So nothing against Matthew Dellavedova. He had a terrific series, but ultimately Melbourne didn't win, and they didn't win the last 2 games of the series. And it put him in a terrible position because of the voting system. So for anyone that doesn't know, the voting system, it's a cast of 5. So it's Larry Sengstock, who the trophy is named after, Olgun Ulick, Beck Allen, Andrew Gaze, and Derek Rucker. They cast their 3-2-1 votes after all 5 games, and then they're tallied up at the end of it. So that meant that we're in a terrible position where we didn't know who was going to win the championship series going into Game 5, but we knew who the MVP already was because Delhi had an unassailable lead. And then, probably to make it even worse, not only did Melbourne lose, he didn't have a great Game 5 either. No. Quite honestly, the system has to change, doesn't it? Delhi, I can't imagine anyone handling this situation better than what Delhi did when he got up on stage, but he never should have been put in that position. No. But surely we just have to cast the votes at the end of the series, and then you just give a 5-4, 3-2-1 or 3-2-1 based on who the best player of the series was rather than game by game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, look, it's one of the more frustrating things I've seen from the NBL. And I mean, that's saying something because there's been some pretty infuriating things happen over the years. And look, this is something that obviously has to change. There's no way it can be voted like this moving forward. And look, if you can't picture or figure out who the best player for the series is after the 5 games or 4 or 3, however many it is, for the winning team, then that expert should not be attached to your name.
Yes.
Because I mean, it's fairly obvious. And look, it's one of those things that unless you come out and average a 30-point triple-double on the losing team, there's no way the MVP should go to someone on the losing team, really. And like, I understand it is what it is, and it's for the MVP of the series, and all that, and it's frustrating. It's really frustrating, and it's really not fair to Delhi or to Davo. It was shocking to put Delhi in that situation. Like, that was, I mean, you could see just the shock on his face when it panned to him, and him walking up, he was pissed off, he was upset, and then obviously getting rained with boos, and I don't overly think that they were directed at him. It was more the decision, and the league than anything.
Yeah. because the Hawks already do feel like the world's against them, don't
Well,
they?
absolutely.
And then it's just added to it for them.
Well, the whole league calls it the Melbourne Basketball League, not the National Basketball League.
Yeah.
So, that's just all of a sudden it doesn't help their cause, does it?
No.
So it's a frustrating one. And then, even for Davo, who, biggest moment of his life, on the basketball court. And now he doesn't go down in history as the MVP of a grand final series that they won.
He deserved to get up on the stage and get the trophy, didn't he?
Absolutely did. And, it's a frustrating thing, and it's really shitty that it happened that way, and just put a real dampener on what was a good series overall.
Yeah, it did.
So yeah, it's got to change. It has to change.
Let's take a quick listen to how it all played out, Cody.
Yep.
Let me just say, what a fantastic series of basketball. This is amazing to watch. The series is voted on over the 5 games, and there are 5 judges, and it was a very close finish. But the winner of the MVP for the final series is Matthew Dellavedova.
Hold on. Davo, this really belongs to you. You had a hell of a series. Congratulations on the win. To our boys, thanks for a fun season. To our families, we appreciate everything you do. But Davo, this is yours.
Yeah, so after that, Daly goes down and hands the trophy to Davo, and Davo was embarrassed by the situation.
Yeah.
Daly should have never been in that position. Let's just hope it doesn't happen again, Cody.
Yeah, honestly, and it is upsetting. It's upsetting to see. You could see Davo just didn't want it either, and at that point, that award just becomes a pointless award.
Well, it does
for
now.
something that
Because officially it's Daly's award, but he rejected it.
Yeah.
Davo deserved the award, but he's not going to be officially on the record books.
Yeah, and it's just a shit show, really, to put it plainly. And look, neither of those guys should be put in that situation, and it's tough because then even the acceptance speech is a nothing thing, and look, it's super classy from Delhi to do what
absolutely.
he did. And
I couldn't imagine a player handling it better in that situation.
There would be no way to handle it better.
Yeah.
And look, I know lots of people aren't a fan of, how Delhi goes about things, or just aren't a fan of him in general, but realistically, if you're a fan of Australian basketball, you're a fan of Delhi.
He's
you
always
have to
been
be.
so classy, hasn't he?
He's-
I know he plays hard on the court,
Yeah.
but off the court he's never been anything but classy, has he?
He's the absolute epitome of what Aussie basketball is. Toughness, grit, just willing to get it done by any means necessary. And if you're a proper fan of basketball, then you're a fan of Delhi.
Yeah.
And I mean, this just kind of sums him up perfectly, and how he went about it. So, to put one of the greatest, to put on a green and gold jersey in that kind of a situation is disappointing, and it's a frustrating thing, and something that just overshadows, like I said, what was a great series.
Well, it has, because that's been the most talked about thing since the series, and when we should be talking about how good the Hawks were to win.
Yep, exactly. So, it kind of just takes away from that, and it's not ideal, and hopefully the NBL change how that's done.
All right, Cody, let's take a deep breath. First segment out of the way. Let's hear from Tap Touch, and plenty more from this series to talk about when we come back.
Sounds good.
He'll make it for sure. That's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Imagine what you could be buying instead.
Okay, back on Hoop 7's basketball hustle, Cody. We're still going through the Championship Series that wrapped up with the Illawarra Hawks winning Game 5 on Sunday. Before we get to what we saw on the court, the controversy didn't end in that ceremony afterwards either, because after Game 3, Justin Tatum certainly didn't hold back in what he thought that clearly he just feels like the Hawks are being mistreated and not being treated with the same respect, and that spills over in a number of things in that game. I think early in the game, Delly fell over and looked like he was hurt. The game was stopped, and then later in the game, Trakel hurt his knee and the game wasn't stopped. So that was an example that Tatum used as a way of showing the difference in respect. He's pretty sharp with his tongue, isn't he? When we hear him talking to the referees, he really makes some pointed comments, and I feel like they're probably in the heat of the moment, but they also have a lot of tones where he's accusing the referees of a lot of different things, just the way he's saying it. And I don't know if he means it or if he's just saying it in the heat of the moment. But in the end, the Hawks were fined $7,500 for those comments, and I think it's just an accumulative effect because the comments are now adding up from Tatum. I assume money's not an issue with him because he's got a son that can probably cover any sort of financial issues that he might have. But what do you make of the comments that Tatum continues to make to the referees during the games and also post-match? And does he have a point that the Hawks are sort of being mistreated?
Look, it's a tough one, and you're right. A lot of the times when you hear it picked up on the mic, they are very pointed and very accusatory.
Yeah.
And even in the post-match, I think a lot of those probably aren't overly necessary. Like I understand where he's coming from and that kind of a thing, and it's still that Illawarra versus the world mentality, which I mean is what has got the Hawks where they are.
Yes,
so,
yes.
But yeah, look, I mean, he talked about the Delhi and the Trakel situation, and they were two different situations.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Delhi fell over where everyone kind of still was. That's player protection type territory. Trey was at the other end of the floor.
He was in the key, and then the play went up the other end. Yeah.
So, and you see that lots of times where a player's down and they don't stop it until that team gets the ball again. Yeah. So yeah, look, it's bits and pieces like that. But I mean, Tatum was fined multiple times throughout the year for things that he'd said in press conferences, and
including after that first game against Melbourne.
Yeah, exactly. So look, it's one of those things that I get where he's coming from, and look, sometimes you probably feel like he's getting the short end of the stick with things. And yeah, look, I mean, there's some coaches around the league that can get away with more than others, and it's just kind of is what it is. There's not a whole lot we can do about that. But yeah, look, I think the difference with Tatum is a lot of his comments are a lot more pointed, like you said.
Similar to Scott Roth, isn't it? Where he feels like it's Larry Kesselman's league and it's run out of Melbourne as well, and that's where a lot of his comments have been directed as well. Really interested in the timing of the leaking of the news that the club owners in general, led by Jared Novelly, I think it is at the Hawks, is looking to. Well, I mean, they're looking to have the clubs take ownership of the league from Larry Kesselman in a proposal where all 10 clubs would have a 10% ownership stake. But really interested in the timing that it comes out the weekend of Game 5 of the Championship Series, and then Larry Kesselman makes it clear that he's not going anywhere. And I think you can make a case either way. I mean, Larry's done a terrific job in so many ways, but at the same time, I feel like some of the clubs feel like it's not even financial distribution, and there might be some favoritism towards Melbourne. So, I mean, you can make a case either way, and I don't really want us to get stuck into that. But what did you make of the timing of how it all came out?
Yeah, it was pretty average timing, wasn't it? I mean, even the fine of Tatum that was all done just before Game 4 started, and look, the timing of it was very interesting, and whether it was all worded properly and that kind of a thing, because it just sounded like he was trying to overrun the league and that kind of a thing, and I don't necessarily think that's what he was going for.
No, I don't think he wants more ownership than anyone else. He wants every club to have equal ownership.
Yeah, and I do understand where he's coming from, and I get it, and I think there's not too many great leagues around the world where the owner of the league is also a owner of one of the teams in it. So, look, there is a conflict of interest there. I get that, but you've got to look at the body of work that he's done, that Kesselman's done with this league, and how far it's come in what is really a short span of time. It's so overly impressive.
Yep.
And
let's be honest, we wouldn't have a league right now without him.
No, absolutely not.
Or if we did, it would be being run like the WNBL is.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a tough one. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, and you can see both sides of it. I understand the conflict of interest, but at this point, it's tough to do much about it unless Larry sells his stake with United. And look, I don't overly think that's going to happen either.
No, and I think the bigger issue is also the revenue distribution, where I think the clubs feel like the money the league makes could be distributed better to the clubs. But I mean, without seeing the books and without spending a whole hour going into that, that's probably a long discussion. But it'll be interesting to see how it continues to play out. But let's focus on what we saw on the court. Let's talk more about Davo Hickey, who, whether the record books say it or not, he's clearly the Larry Sengstock Trophy winner of this series. He's the MVP of the Championship Series, and he's the reason the Illawarra Hawks, above everybody else, are champions right now, because what he did across the whole series, because he did average 15.4 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, was great. But have a look at Games 4 and Game 5 when the Hawks season was on the line. They were down 1-2 in the series. So Game 4 in Melbourne, he has 22 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, and that's with Traykel not out there. And then in Game 5, he still starts with Traykel coming back, but he has 21 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. He's the best player in the last 2 games, but clearly the best player across the whole series. And it's an amazing story. I mean, you go back to the first 7 games of last season when Jacob Jackamus was coach, and he virtually wasn't playing. Justin Tatum saw something in him. He started playing immediately, and now he's led them to a championship.
It's really cool story. And, even listening to, he was at Southeast, didn't work. He was at Melbourne, didn't work, and then picked up by the Hawks, and initially wasn't working, and to for Tatum to have that trust in him, I think, or to see what he could be able to do is super impressive. And then to just have the trust in him to go out there and do it. Look, Game 4 and 5 wasn't for Davo, this series would have been over in 4, and Melbourne would have won it at home. Because I mean, he was about the only one out there actually doing stuff in Game 4.
Yes,
I think that obviously no Trey out there, and then when Sam went down, you could kind of see some of the body language of the Hawks guys just drop a little bit. And
even Harvey was struggling in that game too.
Yep, and Davo was the one that kind of just picked that energy up and ran with it. And I mean, he plays at one speed no matter what the situation is. They could be up 50, down 50. He'd play the exact same way. And look, they're just overly impressive in those 2 closeout games. First to keep their season alive and to keep that championship hopes alive, and then to come out and have a near triple-double in the clincher at home was super impressive.
That's the best thing about him, isn't it? Because there's not much polish about his game. It's just all pure heart, effort, and desire to want it more than everyone else. He's playing at it. It's hard not to just want to see him do well, because that he's just giving everything every second.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, there's moments throughout games where you're wondering what's going on, what he's doing. And he makes some silly mistakes, and Melbourne were clearly trying to let him be the decision maker on the floor.
Because he has been turnover prone at times, hasn't he?
Absolutely. But I mean, just the way he was able to handle those situations and just constantly making the right play. There was a couple of times where he was the one driving, but he dished off to Lockie circling under the rim for a little dump off and a layup, and or finding a shooter, and he just kept making the right plays, and it was a lot of fun to watch.
He just gets so many offensive rebounds, and that's just all pure on wanting it more than everybody else. I mean, he had 30 rebounds for the series. I imagine, off the top of my head, 20 of them were offensive.
Yeah, probably. It was just like you said, all hustle and grit and just want.
Rebounding overall ended up becoming a real deciding factor, and it's been a problem for Melbourne throughout. We did see the Wildcats get hold of them in the rebounding count as well in that semi-final series, and it wasn't a massive differential across the first 3 games, but once Illawarra had to win games 4 and 5, the numbers were pretty stark. So across games 4 and 5, the Hawks had 108 rebounds, Melbourne only 73, 37-21 offensive, and then that turned into 28-18 second chance points. That was as big a factor as anything.
It's a lot of rebounds.
It is.
Over 2 games.
Also means Melbourne's missing a lot of shots.
Yeah, which they were.
Yes.
I mean, both teams were. And yeah, I mean, to be blown out of the water that bad over 2 games is concerning.
Yeah.
And that's something that obviously Dean and his staff are going to have to figure out over this off season. Because that's pretty crazy numbers. And look, a lot of the credit is definitely towards the Hawks with how aggressive they are on the boards and just how they get after it. And like you said, guys like Davo, but even Lockie, Olbrich, Mason Peatling, these guys just
even
get
Trey
after
Kell's
the
a good
board.
rebounder for a guard.
Yeah, well, because he's a big body.
Yeah.
He's tough to blocks out. And look, they were really good and just made that a focal point, and that's kind of what got them over the line.
We've talked about this all season with the Hawks as well. Their depth, they've been the deepest team all season long, and the longer this series went, it really shone through because they've got genuinely 2 units. They've got a starting 5, and then they've got a genuine backup in every one of those 5 positions, and that's where it was important because once Sam Froling hurt his Achilles, Lockie Olbrich immediately was able to step up into that role as the 5-man. Once Trey Kell got hurt, Davo Hickey's able to immediately step into that role. They've got a more than adequate replacement in every single position, and that ended up being crucial. Look at Lockie Olbrich's game 4 and game 5s as well. So in game 4, he ends up 13 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and they're +6 in a tight game. And then in game 5, they're +14 in his minutes and 12 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. And we'll get to Wani in a second as well. But having a ready-made replacement in every position means that if someone goes down, everyone talks about the next man up mentality, but they are well equipped to handle it.
Yeah, and look, I thought Lockie was outstanding for the back end of game 4 and then all of game 5.
Yep.
I think his minutes just skyrocketed, obviously, with Sam out, and he just stepped up to the challenge and just super impressive. And I think the plus minus doesn't really tell the story of it either and how impactful he was. Made some big plays late. Big block late in game 5 when Melbourne were making a bit of a charge, and just a tough bucket over Rob Lowe, who played some pretty good defense, but just a really tough little hook shot that same thing, kind of kept that buffer where it was for a majority of the 4th. And to be able to step up and really just not take a backward step was all the more impressive.
Especially when you're coming up against, experience like Rob Lowe, Marcus Lee, Jack White.
Yeah.
And for a guy who's only 21, I mean, that shows what a future he's got still.
Yeah, no, he's going to be a very, very good player and have a heck of a career.
What about an old teammate of yours, Wani Swakaloba? Look, he's someone that doesn't get talked about a lot still, but he's now a 4-time championship winner, and this is probably as big a part in a championship as he's ever played. I mean, he did play a big role. He was a starter in the championship one at the Kings, so he did play a big role there, but his defense across all 5 games in this series on Chris Goulding was terrific. Goulding still, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I still think he averaged close to 20 points. But
I think it was 15 or 16.
Yeah, but it was really inefficient. I mean, he was forced to shoot poorly because of the defense played on him. And then Wani just has a knack for hitting big shots in big moments. And he had 12 points in the second quarter of game 5 on his own.
Yeah.
And, some of those corner threes, you just can't leave him alone.
No.
I still remember, I go back to that season you won a championship with the Warwick Senators, and you didn't have imports because it was the COVID season. He ends up playing the point guard role on that team, and he was so important in that championship. So he can do everything, but ultimately he's just a winner, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And, it's so cool to see just, again, his growth and where he's gotten to from, where he started. I helped Dad coach him at under 16s. So it's pretty wild. But yeah, just everywhere he goes, he wins.
Yep.
And he knows how to get it done. I think he's only 23, 24 years old, and he's got 4 championships already, So he's still got a long, long time to play in this league. And
he hasn't reached his prime yet, has he?
No, exactly. So, and he's only getting better. Yep. If he can stay consistent with his 3-ball, I think he shot it at 40-something% this year. So he was knocking it down. You can't leave him alone. If he can up the amount of attempts he gets and keep that percentage where it's at, then all of a sudden he becomes a very, very important piece to whatever team he's on. But yeah, look, so happy for him. It's awesome to see.
What about Melbourne United? How do you, if you're in Melbourne United's shoes right now, how do you take stock of this? Because if you go back 3 seasons ago, they finished on top. They had home court advantage against the Jack Jumpers.
Yep.
They lose that series at home in Game 3. They didn't have Chris Golding for that game. Game 3, you fast forward to last season, and again, they're the standout team all season. They finish on top. Home court advantage, and they're up 2-1 in the Grand Championship Series against the Jack Jumpers, and they find a way to lose. And then we thought that the things that hurt them late in that series, they learned from, and for a lot of this season, we saw signs that they learned from it. And then they end up back in the exact same position. They're leading 2-1, and they lose Game 4 and Game 5 again with a pretty similar playing group. Not a lot of changes. Jack White for Luke Travers, and Marcus Lee comes in for Joe Lualu-Chul, and really they didn't have Ariel Hukporti, but very similar playing group. How do you deal with this if you're Melbourne United?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough one. And look, like I said before, you got to go away and address the rebounding because, obviously got out-rebounded in both their series in the finals this year. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one. It's really brutal to lose back-to-back grand finals in Game 5s when you had a chance to win it on your home floor too.
Yes.
Is demoralising. It's you could see it on a lot of their faces when they were sitting there at the end of the game, and that's a tough one. It's a tough pill to swallow, but I mean, talk about consistent.
Yes.
It's tough to get there, but it's it's tougher to win. And look, I know how upsetting it is to be sitting there when you lose one, but to lose this back to back has got to be just heart wrenching. But look, they've got some pieces that they need to add. We said it at the start of the year. While there wasn't a whole lot of, there was a bit of turnover, but they were able to find some like for like replacements. We thought they were missing just that extra piece all year,
and I think they were in the end. Now that we can look back on in complete hindsight.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, not having Shea was brutal for him, and that's tough. Even in this game, he took another hit to the head too that just made me shiver.
Yeah. He just keeps putting his body in those positions, doesn't he? Which is what also makes him so good.
Yeah. And you're not going to stop that. No. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him moving forward.
Also Delling, because there's a lot of interest from other clubs now that he's out of contract.
Yeah, and lots of rumours flying around. So, look, they've got a pretty big off-season ahead of them to try and figure out how to get over that hump again.
Yep. And then they have a new recruit already, Dash Daniels, coming in as well. Yep. So he will add to that. But, Marcus Lee, Cody, I saw something that I've never seen before in my life. He had a pinched nerve. I think it was in his neck a few minutes earlier, and he went off and comes back on, gets fouled, and clearly something wasn't right on the right side of his body. We've seen Jack White miss some bad free throws in this series, but this one takes the cake because I think he completely missed the backboard, or he might have got the very bottom corner on the right hand side. So clearly something went wrong in his right hand side. And then he just decides to shoot left-handed. Yeah. And they're the best two-looking free throws I've ever seen him attempt.
Crazy. I know. I think if that first free throw actually did make the distance to the backboard, it wouldn't have hit it anyway because it was it was outside of it.
Yeah.
And it was, you're right. I was sitting there watching it, and it was.
I had to replay to watch it to actually believe what I was seeing.
Oh, it looked like someone just got up there and pushed the ball away midair. It was crazy. And I mean, look, sometimes I've seen some people all of a sudden shoot with their offhand and it looks better than what it does in their normal hand. And, there's a couple NBA guys that have done that. Plumlee being one. He now shoots his free throws left-handed because he couldn't make them right-handed.
Yeah. And famously, Larry Bird even went into a three-point shooting contest and just decided, I can beat everyone too easily. I'm going to do it left-handed.
Yeah, he's just on another level, though.
And, of course, he still won.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure one of the Froling sisters now shoots left-handed
possibly,
as well. I'm not sure which one.
No, not sure. But, look, it was pretty bizarre. It was really bizarre.
But because of how good his left-handed ones look, does he stick with it?
Who knows? He's going to have to work on it a lot because, it's all well and good for a couple free throws, but to do it consistently is a whole nother ball game.
I know he made the next one, but is that the worst possible situation? We saw the same thing with. It happened with Tyrell Harrison when he copped his concussion, and he had to take his free throws, and then he clearly he didn't play again, so clearly something was wrong. But then he missed his first two, and he had to come back and shoot a third. Is that the worst possible time for a lane violation for someone that doesn't want to be shooting already?
Absolutely is. Yeah, it definitely is. It's the last thing you want when you're struggling from the line is to have to shoot another one. So, which is why we see, we saw Jack kind of avoid contact.
Yep.
We did, because he didn't want to go to the line either. Yep. So it's the free throw line is even more so a mental game than it is a skill thing.
So clearly executing late in the game was the thing that Melbourne was left thinking about that hurt them last season. Going to this off-season, obviously they'll make some personnel changes, but if you're the coaching staff, what is it that you're focusing on if you get in this position again that we can't let happen again this time?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, there's obviously a few things to it. I think, they got taken out of what made them successful throughout the year, and a lot of that was going through Goulding. Delhi struggled a lot late in the series just because of the physicality and the size of the Hawks. Yep. But I think rebounding is such a major factor. And, a lot of that reason was it ended up with the Hawks scoring 60-something, maybe 70 points in the paint in Game 5.
Oh, they did.
So it's just like that's massive. And especially when you've got, three bigs that are legitimate, like legit bigs that are very good. To be outscored kind of like that in the paint is pretty crazy.
64 points in the paint.
64 points in the paint. That's very impressive stat for the Hawks and a very unimpressive stat for Melbourne. So I think it's just little bits and pieces. I don't think there's anything major that they need to change, but it just tweaks here and there. But yeah, I think obviously, we saw it with the Cats last off season and how it really addressed the rebounding and the 3-point shooting and they were a very different team because of it this year. And I think that's something that Melbourne's got to look at.
All right, Cody, you happy that we've wrapped up the championship series?
Yeah, very much so. Right. It dragged on, didn't it?
Longest ever from the end of the regular season to the end of the grand final series. Longest ever NBL postseason.
Well, I mean, grand final series itself went for 2.5 weeks. It's crazy.
It feels like we could have condensed it a little bit, Cody, but
definitely could have.
We got there in the end. Now, let's hear from Tap Touch when we come back. Let's talk some March Madness basketball.
Sounds good.
Can you picture the first goal before the ball has even bounced? Can you read the footy future in the mullet of a full forward? You've got the touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today.
You win some, you lose more.
All right, I'm back here with Cody Ellis on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle to wrap up things this week and take a bit of a different track to wrap up things, Cody, for this episode. Let's go to March Madness, your favourite time of basketball for the year. You had your own college career at St. Louis. What are your memories that stick out when you reflect back?
Look, there's plenty.
Yes. We could probably do a whole show on it.
Yeah, honestly. Look, winning a conference championship was pretty special. And then obviously going to the NCAA tournament twice was also pretty special. And to be able to play in two of those was awesome. Yeah. It was awesome. And, the first time that the school had made it in a long, long time. I think they've only made it once or twice since as well. Yep. So, yeah, look, some pretty cool memories. But, yeah, to be able to cut down the net at Barclays Centre as a conference champions and as, captain of the team and won Sixth Man of the Year for the conference that year and everything. So it was a pretty special year, my senior year.
Yes, that's tough to stop. Yeah. I mean, even 15 years later or whatever it is that still your career highlight?
Definitely up there. Yeah, it is definitely up there. It's something that's certainly very special.
Yes, absolutely. Is this your favourite time of basketball for the year? This 3-week period of March Madness college basketball, is this your favourite basketball to watch?
Yeah, I think so. I think you tie in NBL Championship Series in there on top of, being able to watch the best teams in the States go after it. And, I mean, college basketball is way better to watch than the NBA at the moment. Yes. So, NBA does really start to turn it on at this time of year with everyone trying to push for finals and stuff like that.
There's finally some stakes, isn't there?
Yeah. So, look, this kind of this month or so, really 2 months is always fun to watch.
So we've just seen the first and second rounds over this weekend that have just wrapped up. So we're down to the Sweet 16. Anything catch your eye, especially over the first couple of rounds, Cody?
Look, not overly. Look, there's obviously been some upsets, and there always is. Duke's going to be tough to beat. Yep. They're very, very good. I have Florida winning the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
They just scraped over the line against UConn.
Yeah, they did. They did.
You ask Hurley, he got cheated, but
Yes.
That's okay. But no, look, lots of really good teams to watch, and we just watched the end of Oregon Arizona. That was a heck of a game and a really good finish for what was I think a 4-5 matchup, and just like some of the talent out on the floor is awesome. It's really impressive, and you see some guys come in and make big free throws late in games, and some guys that sit for long periods of time and then get subbed in the last 30 seconds and have to come out and make a defensive stop or get a big rebound and that kind of a thing. And yeah, it's just it's a super fun time of year.
Yeah.
It really is.
What's the pressure like being out there knowing that it's different than having a supporter base behind you? You've got a whole school and that community behind you. What's it like representing the school out on a court?
Oh, it's awesome. It's great. And you're right. It is its own little community, really. And I can only imagine what it's like for some of these big schools that have, a lot more followers than we had.
Yeah.
We still had, the whole of St. Louis behind us, which is fantastic. But you do look at some of the big schools like your Dukes and that. Just it's crazy. The following's crazy, and you see students and all kinds of people travel and watch you, and some of the stadiums they're playing in are massive stadiums, and they're always full and they're loud and the atmosphere's great, and it's a different world, man.
Well, even looking at the Final Four and then the championship game in a couple of weeks, it's going to be at the Alamodome in San Antonio. I don't know what it's like for a basketball setup, but that's a stadium that could have anywhere 50, 60, 70,000 people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people watching a basketball game, isn't it?
It's incredible.
Yeah, and like I said, the atmosphere in those things is just next level.
Yeah.
It's something that isn't replicated really on a professional level unless you're in Europe, I think.
Yes,
I think some of those.
Yes.
But yeah, it's its own world, and it's something that I certainly miss playing in front of.
Yes. Have you had much of a chance or a chance at all to go back to St. Louis since you played?
No. So when Laura and I got married, but that was nearly 10 years ago now. Yep. So I haven't been able to go back, unfortunately. Lauren and Chase have been back a couple times just to see the family. But I haven't had a chance to go back yet. I'd love to.
Yes. All right, let's have a look at the Sweet 16 then. You can have a look at all of these odds on TabTouch as well. So check out tabtouch.com.au or the TabTouch app, and you can have a look at all these different markets as well. Let's see if you can help us get to a winner, Cody, or at least to a Final Four by the end of this week, and then next week we can come back and look at the Final Four in our last show for a little while. Start at the top within the Sweet 16. So we've got Auburn and Michigan. I know who Elvis hopes you you select. He's sitting over there in his Michigan shirt. But who do you think?
Yeah, look, I had Michigan winning this one. Look, Auburn's very, very good. But I think Michigan is as well. And look, I don't expect the Final Four to be all number one seeds, so someone's got to fall. But look, I think I'm going to go with Michigan on that one.
Next up, we got Ole Miss, who had a pretty good win over Iowa State, and then Michigan State, who had a pretty good win also over New Mexico.
I think I'm going to go with Michigan State and end up
all Michigan
State,
Elite Eight,
which would be a bit of fun after the controversy of the senior night in Michigan State.
Yes,
so
it would.
That'd be enjoyable.
Yes, and then I think I know which direction you'll go in this one, because you've got Florida winning the whole thing. But Florida playing Maryland, and that was a hell of a game. Maryland beat Colorado State on a game winner to get to this round.
Yeah. Look, both of those games to get to this spot.
Oh, actually, Florida was too.
UConn,
yes.
Was awesome, and then Colorado State and Maryland. It was a tough one. Colorado State hit a big shot, hit a three with I think
5 seconds ago,
or 6 seconds left to put them up a point, and then go down the other end of the floor and force a really tough shot and a heck of a make. I think that's the first buzzer beater we've seen in the tournament this year, which is actually surprising that we're this deep in without that. But yeah, look, I think I'd have to go with Florida on this one.
Then last one on this side of the draw, we got Texas Tech and Arkansas. This one's probably tougher to tip than the rest.
Yeah, look, a little bit. I think Arkansas is very, very good. I
Mm.
mean, they're coached very well.
Yep.
Not surprisingly. But look, I think Texas Tech get that one done.
Mm. All right, so stick to this side of the draw. Who wins the All-Michigan matchup?
Michigan. I think Michigan get it.
Yeah, Michigan, and then Florida on the
Florida.
other
Yep.
one. And then if
Yep.
that plays out, we can come back next week
Yep.
and continue on the prediction game. Go to the other side of the draw. We got Duke and Arizona. I know Duke are probably the favourites to win the whole thing, but gee, they'll have to do well to get past Arizona.
Yeah, look, Arizona playing some really good basketball. Just saw Caleb Love at his elite self
Yes.
and making some big shots late, and he's going to be tough to guard. But look, I don't think they're going to have the answers for Duke.
Then next up, we got BYU and Alabama. This is a tough one to pick too.
Yeah, it is, but I think Bama are just going to be too good for them.
Yep.
BYU's looked really good. I mean, really convincing against Wisconsin. But look, I think Bama gets that one.
Yeah, Alabama very good against St. Mary's as
very
well.
good.
Then we've got Houston, another number one seed, up against Purdue. Who have you got in that one?
Yeah, look, Houston is a very well coached and very tough team.
Yep.
I think it's hard to not pick them in this one. Yeah, look, I think Purdue just missing another piece or so. Now with Zach Edey not there anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Houston get that job done.
Yeah, and I think I'm pulling for I know Houston's a bit away from San Antonio.
Yep.
I'm pulling for a Texas team to be playing
Yeah.
in the Final Four at the Alamo Dome. I think that'll be pretty cool as
That would
well.
be cool.
Last one. So then we got Kentucky and Tennessee, pretty famous rivals, and
Yeah.
I'm sure this will be another story to it.
Yeah, look, this will be fun. 2 versus 3 is always a good matchup, but I reckon Tennessee get it.
Mhm.
I reckon Tennessee get it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if Kentucky's out.
Yeah.
All right, so that means Duke and Alabama in the Elite Eight,
We'll go with Duke there.
and then Houston and Tennessee to wrap up the Elite Eight.
Let's go with Tennessee.
Yeah?
Let's go with Tennessee.
All right, so if that all plays out, we got Michigan and Florida. Michigan, Florida,
Duke and Tennessee.
Duke and Tennessee is your Final Four. Is that what your bracket came up with when you originally did it?
I think it was pretty close.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it was pretty close. So, look, my bracket was busted within the first hour of it, but just like most people. But yeah, look, it's always a fun time of year, isn't
Yeah,
it? And there's always upsets.
Yes.
It's not often that I have really 1s and 2s in the Final Four, but I just feel like this top crop of teams is just super dominant this year.
Yep.
So, look, I'm really looking forward to seeing these next few rounds of games.
Yeah, a lot of the time the seedings doesn't count for anything once
No.
they get on the court, does
No,
it?
it doesn't. It really doesn't.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll come back next week because we'll do another show next week where we can wrap that up, but also wrap up the whole NBL season, and we'll have put our rule over every NBL team and do a bit of a wrap up and look ahead and wrap up things. So we'll have a bit of time, and by that stage we'll be looking ahead to the Final Four, so we'll know who's there. Cody, we'll also have a bit of time to talk about your NBL 1 season, but just quickly, you're less than 2 weeks now from that starting. You feeling pretty good about your Warwick Senators for this season?
Yeah. Look, I think once we get a few games under our belt and playing together, we'll be pretty tough.
Mhm.
Yeah. Look, I'm pretty confident in our squad, and we're super talented, and we're pretty deep.
Yes.
So, but yeah, look, there's lots of talent around the league this year, and again, the league just keeps going from strength to strength, and there's going to be some very good players around the league, and it's been a lot of movement.
Yes.
But no, look, we'll be good. We'll be very good.
All right, very good. We can talk a bit more about that next week in the preparation of your first game, which is
5th of April against Lakeside away.
Okay. So a nice road trip for you
Yeah.
to start with. All right, Cody. That's a lot for us to get through. We've got our NBL Championship winner. Congratulations to the Illawarra Hawks. I'll leave it there. I'm Chris Pike, as always, but leave you with a former Illawarra Hawks player who's pretty happy to have seen, 24 hours ago, less than 24 hours ago, seeing his team finally break through.
Yeah, look, obviously massive congratulations to the Hawks and everyone involved, and couldn't be more happy for the whole town and the whole area of Illawarra.
Can you picture the first goal before the ball's even bounced? You might have the touch. When the weather's wet, can you feel who'll triumph? You've got the power. Can you read the footy future in the mullet of a full forward? Then you too might be harnessing the power of the touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.